Good evening, everyone. Happy Christmas Eve.
Happy Christmas Eve.
We're so happy to be here with you. I'm Joey.
I'm Tanya.
And this is Into the Outer Realms. And all we really want to say before we roll the intro is welcome, because we're going to talk about Santa, Krampus, La Befana, Marley's Ghost, and more on this special Christmas and the Paranormal episode. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Okay, and we're back. Let's jump right in.
Whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet round a fire on Christmas Eve, they start telling each other ghost stories. Nothing satisfies us on Christmas Eve but to hear each other tell authentic anecdotes about specters. It is a genial, festive season, and we love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murders and blood. Humorist Jerome K. Jerome wrote in Told After Supper, which was published in 1891.
In Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, Mamilius says, "A sad tale's best for winter. I have one of sprites and goblins."
In Christopher Marlowe's play, The Jew of Malta, the title character says, "Now I remember those old women's words, who in my wealth would tell me winter's tales and speak of spirits and ghosts by night."
Do you know this quote? "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago." It's from Andy Williams' 1963 Christmas classic, The Most Wonderful Time of the Year. And I, for some reason, have never heard that lyric until I saw it spelled out.
I didn't know the exact lyrics, but I knew that's what it was from.
Or it didn't register, I should say.
Yeah, probably didn't register. Then there's It's a Wonderful Life, where an angel takes down on his luck George Bailey to a parallel universe where he never existed.
And of course, Stephen King's horror classic, which I'm not making a case that this is a Christmas movie, but it certainly does take place in the winter and has plenty of ghosts.
Absolutely. The tradition of ghostly tales around Christmas is thousands of years old, stemming from the ancient celebrations of the winter solstice. December 25th has especially close ties to pre-Christian solstice festivals, when light was said to die and the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead was most thin.
Right. And if anyone would say, what does this have to do with Christmas Eve? That's really why so many of these traditions are locked into winter solstice. Mm-hmm. And although we spend a lot of time here on Into the Outer Realms talking about the paranormal, we also like to bring a spiritual element to it. And these traditions are just fascinating.
That's right. Wreaths, holly, mistletoe, and Yule logs are all pagan symbols, all incorporated into our Christmas tradition.
That's right. There were ghostly processions across the sky once upon a time called the Wild Hunt, involving the Norse god Woden or Odin. And Odin comes back in with some of our most beloved Christmas figures later in the show.
That's right. And reciting tales of heroism and supernatural beings were for hundreds of years a midwinter tradition.
Now, it was the Victorian tradition, and you'll see we put together an approximation of Victorian garb thanks to our old friend who donated these wonderful costumes years ago, Jonathan Ryder from Ryder Gifts and Collectibles. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everyone there in Fairmont, West Virginia.
West Virginia. Thank you, Jonathan.
A board member and longtime supporter of the theater company.
That's right. Right.
Yeah, and these are actually, you can't even tell the detail.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can't really see them. It's a shame because they're beautiful costumes. So.
Right. So it was in this Victorian tradition to send really strange Christmas cards. If you just go out on the internet and put Victorian Christmas cards and throw in the word weird, boy, you're going to see some crazy stuff. So there are illustrations of old Saint Nick or Krampus stuffing naughty children into a sack, or outside windows like peeping Toms. And some of the cards even featured knife-wielding frogs and insects that look uncomfortably human. It's like the Wind in the Willows, like Nightmare Edition. And they would send each other these cards.
That's awesome. In the Serbian tradition, the 12 days of Christmas were known as the unbaptized days. It was a time when demonic forces were said to be more active and more dangerous than usual.
And we're going to get into some of those demonic forces later on. People were careful not to attract these demonic forces' attention, which we talk about all the time on the show, and they would not go out at night. And I know for many of us, we're all kind of stuck home here for Christmas Eve. So at least you don't have to deal with the demonic forces that are out there laying in wait for you.
That's right.
It's an upside.
Maybe the belief in demons and fear of being punished for doing bad things led to the tradition of ghosts and other entities conspiring to teach moral lessons at Christmas time. Got a little tongue-tied on moral lessons.
That makes me think, very telling, perhaps. Are you nervous that Santa's not coming tomorrow? So hello to our friend Ronald, by the way.
Ronald.
Ronald is the lead head honcho, top banana, big kahuna over at ERRT Radio. We've been guests several times.
Yeah.
And Ronald does Into the Outer Realms Revisited every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. And he asked us, please, to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas from everyone at ERRT Radio. I promised him we'd do that. And so we need to fulfill our promises.
Absolutely.
So, American writer Washington Irving, which you probably know from Legend of Sleepy Hollow, he actually helped to revive many of the old Christmas storytelling traditions in the early 1800s, including those about ghosts. Although we cannot talk about moralistic spirits and otherworldly entities appearing during the holidays without, of course, focusing on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which was written in 1843. And I adapted it for the stage about 18 years ago. And for years, right, we would be outside of town hall, outside of banks and schools and theaters, performing readers' theater of this. So if any of our former actors, and there have probably been dozens, if not hundreds, who joined us, any of you out there, we deeply appreciate you making those memories for us. So, and of course, the opening quote. Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. And tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, with our son Jeremy, we are going to be in our pajamas watching Muppets Christmas Carol with Michael Caine. He is probably my favorite. And this story, everyone is fascinated by this story year after year after year. It's been made over and over again with such great actors as Michael Caine, who's my personal favorite, closely followed, I think, by George C. Scott and Patrick Stewart. And as recently as just last year, can't believe it was a year ago, sitting by myself watching it, There was a new adaptation by Peaky Blinders creator Stephen Knight starring Guy Pearce. Now, this is very, very adult. It goes very off the rails. And as someone put up, I saw on Facebook right before we came on tonight, if you say warning adult content, maybe you shouldn't call it A Christmas Carol. And that's my feeling. I mean, everyone, have your own opinion about that, but I really thought he took some unnecessary liberties.
I think that's why I took a pass on it last year.
Yeah, we talked about it, right?
Watch it without me, but yeah, I wasn't interested in that kind of adaptation. But my favorite Scrooge of all time is Bill Murray. We especially love the updated version of Scrooge with Bill Murray as the bah humbuggy Frank Cross. Scrooged, of course, being from the 1980s. We watch it every year.
Yep, quoted thoroughly.
My favorite adaptation.
Feed me, Seymour, feed me. I had to do it with the hat on. So Dickens didn't stop with The Christmas Carol. This is where I think it starts to get really interesting. He also included Christmas ghosts and goblins in other tales. You might want to read The Chimes or The Haunted Man and the Ghost's Bargain. Christmas Eve, he wrote in 1854 in The Seven Poor Travelers, is the witching time for storytelling. So Dickens really felt, hey, not only is this appropriate, but this is the prime time, I think, because of all that winter solstice stuff and the different personifications of the idea of the winter solstice, the thinning of the veil and all that we're going to talk about tonight.
Exactly.
So I read your part, so you can read mine. How's that?
That's fine. His close friend and accomplished horror writer Wilkie Collins also wrote some spooky Christmas stories, which were included, along with Dickens and others, in the annual Christmas issues of the magazine Household Worlds, and after 1859, all the year round, which Dickens edited.
And not fair, because it wasn't your line, but Household Words. If you want to look up some old, maybe digitized versions of that magazine, which he edited for a long time. Now, I love Wilkie Collins, a great writer, and I'm hoping to get some Wilkie Collins novels for Christmas. That'll be a wonderful way to spend the winter. But anyway, let's go back to where we're supposed to be.
In 1868, he discontinued ghost stories and Christmas publications because he felt he killed Christmas.
Ooh.
Telling a friend, I felt as if I had murdered Christmas a number of years ago. Perhaps I did, and its ghost perpetually haunted me.
Now, at that moment when Dickens decided, hey, maybe this isn't the best thing for Christmas, maybe things have gotten out of hand, maybe I've actually put a stake of holly through its heart. Stop. Things began to change, and this is where we slowly start to get away from the tradition. But as a writer, as sort of a historian of the written word, I find this fascinating. 3 decades later, William Dean Howells lamented in a Harper's article that the Christmas ghost tradition suffered from the loss of Dickens' sentimental morality. Talk about a mouthful. The ethical intention which gave dignity to Dickens' Christmas stories of still earlier date has almost wholly disappeared. So what we have is by the fin de siècle, by the end of the 1800s and getting into the 1900s, more entrenched in the Edwardian times, horror stories became more just horror stories and didn't have that moral or cautionary aspect to them.
That's right. The tradition of ghost stories at Christmas was not completely finished, though. Henry James's famous 1898 Gothic novella, The Turn of the Screw, opens with a group of men sitting around a fire telling ghost stories on Christmas Eve. And in 2020, James's novella was adapted by Michael Flanagan for Netflix under the name A Haunting of Bly Manor. I loved it. I thought it was very well done. Again, an adaptation that I really, really enjoyed.
But an interesting couple of things. It was situated at a wedding instead of at Christmas time.
Yep.
And it was told by a woman, the very talented Carla Gugino's character. Right. So, pair this move from morality to pure horror in Christmas stories with the wave of Scottish immigrants bringing Samhain and the seeds of the Halloween traditions and rituals to America, and the steady transition from Christmas to Halloween as the appropriate time for scary stories
makes a lot of sense. So we don't go into it in a lot of detail on our notes, but we can talk about it for a little. So when the first Scottish immigrants began to come over, of course, the Scotch-Irish made a huge impact on what became America, its complexion, its personality, everything else. And they wanted to downplay the horror element, even the supernatural element of these Halloween traditions, and make them about hearth and home and harvest and those kinds of things. And as we know, as time went on, Halloween became more and more the time to situate ghost stories and scary things and spooky things. And Christmas then became more religious and cleaned up some.
That's true. And although Halloween is still huge, right? I mean, I think Halloween is like the only second behind Christmas in terms of holidays that people celebrate.
Absolutely.
So, but the I can't talk. The transition was not immediate, though. Florence Kingsland's 1904 book of indoor and outdoor games listed ghost stories as wholly appropriate for Christmas celebrations. She wrote that the realm of spirits was always thought to be nearer to that of mortals on Christmas than any other time. 1915 was still seeing Christmas annuals of magazines with lots of ghost stories.
So, all things considered, only 100 years ago, this was still a really big part. And I was thinking, you think about Halloween, you think about Christmas, and then there's the brilliant that we love, Jack Skellington.
Oh, yes.
A Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim Burton, I think one of his masterworks, or perhaps his masterwork, really bridging that connection between the two. That really, even though we've been watching that for 20 some years,
I know,
this research for this presentation really brought that home and said, yeah, there are overlaps and connections, and we're going to talk about at least one of them specifically in a little bit. So, at this time, again in the early 1900s, Cambridge University scholar, provost, and purveyor of supernatural tales, M.R. James, and I love M.R. James. We watched a biography about him over the summer.
That's right.
He used the narrative device of a group of friends telling stories around a roaring fire. And I have to think, and his name, Peter Straub,
Peter Straub,
right? Ghost Story,
yes,
which is one of those stories where, like Oliver Siegel's Love Story, you look at a whole bunch of stories in a genre, you break them all down into their component parts, and then you throw them in a stew and you create your own thing, and you simply call it Ghost Story. And those four men sitting around the fire telling a very, very real ghost story, I would bet has its roots in M.R. James and his practice. So in the introduction to Ghost Stories, he said, I wrote these stories at long intervals, and most of them were read to patient friends, usually at the seasons of Christmas. Now, I write some horror. If we invited some people over when we can do that again, and I said, guys, you want to hear a creepy horror story for Christmas? They'd probably say, get the heck out of here.
No, but I was just thinking, I think we should make that a new tradition.
I love it.
Even if it's just you and me. On Christmas Eve, we each make up a ghost story and tell it. I think that would be so much fun.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. So let's take a look at some of the main figures associated with Christmas, as well as some lesser known ones in terms of the paranormal and the supernatural.
Right. And there, to me, this is some very shocking stuff. Hello, Connie Medea.
Hi,
ladies
Mom.
and gentlemen, my mom. A Merry Christmas
Merry
Eve.
Christmas.
Thank you for joining us. So, Black Peter, or in Dutch, Zwart Piet, and in Luxembourgian, Zwarte Pieter. Now, he appears at the Feast of St. Nicholas, which of course is on December 5th. Now, in the Netherlands, he accompanies Sinterklaas, another version of Santa Claus. Now, they don't come from the North Pole, though. This gets very, very, very interesting. They don't come from the North Pole, old Santa Claus and Black Peter. No, they come from a boat in Spain. And they think possibly that's because one of the roots of where Black Peter comes from may be a former Moorish slave from Spain. Now, Peter's also theorized to be a conquered devil forced to help Santa. Sounds a lot like someone else we're going to talk about. Or as a soot-covered chimney sweep. also, which would explain the dark complexion. Now,
Maybe why Santa comes down the chimney.
could very well be why Santa comes down the chimney. Now, he also punishes bad children, and he puts them in a bag to steal them and bring them back to Spain. Now, as it turns out, speaking of my mom being here, I was born in Spain on the naval base in Rota. So if I get a free ride back in the sack to Spain, that might be cool. But that's just me. So here's an interesting factoid. Black Peter's name was slightly changed to Black Phillip, which is the demonic black goat in Robert Eggers' chilling film The Witch. This is a scary ride, right?
Oh
The
my
Witch.
gosh. That movie gave me nightmares. And I like scary movies. They don't usually give me nightmares, but that movie gave me nightmares.
And an interesting factoid, Robert Eggers, when they brought the black goat on set, he said, make sure you put this goat in the background. Otherwise, it's going to really pull focus. And probably 4 out of 5 people that talk about The Witch say, what about that Black Phillip? That is a disturbing. Some of the looks that goat throws are really, really disturbing. Now, in the second season of What They Do in the Shadows, the witch Lilith has a black goat based on the one from The Witch, and they go back to the original name, which is Black Peter, which I love. So, and I just have to say, I love What They Do in the Shadows.
Oh my gosh.
I can't say any of my favorite
show.
lines
So funny.
because it's Christmas Eve and this is a family show. But that show is hysterical.
It is. It's awesome.
You're up, lady.
Oh, sorry about that. I just didn't even see that part. Santa Claus is probably a combination of.
Oh, no, right here.
Oh, wow. I really jumped ahead there. Wow. It says right there. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I give you dialogue pointers sometimes when we do a lot of research here.
Let's talk about someone a lot nicer. Santa Claus. There's plenty of paranormal and supernatural associated with him, no matter what name he's called. He's an immortal elf in charge of a large population of elves in a frozen landscape, the North Pole. He manipulates time and space, and he has magical flying animals. He telepathically knows all about the behavior of every child on Earth.
So,
isn't that a little bit creepy?
I don't find it creepy, but if we break it down, there's so much stuff there. Let's go back and look at it. So he's an elf. He is a magical elemental creature. So to me, no surprise that he's in a very sort of hostile elemental environment, right? In the frozen landscape. I love that. He can bend time and space. So he's a quantum physics master, a Wu Li master, in a way there. And he has all these other elves who are very studious and create these magical items, magical effects, magical things. And he has magical flying animals. So if we look at this as far as breaking down myth, and I love to teach myth and teach people how to write myth, and all of the things are there to make this happen, which is very, very cool. The creepy part is that he knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you're good or bad. Yeah, very threatening, as we're going to see when I take over somebody a lot darker than Santa Claus.
Well, I'm not sure what's creepier. I think we have to take a moment here and talk about the elf on the shelf.
Let's talk about the elf on the shelf.
Because I think it's really creepy that Santa can know the behavior of every child, whether they're sleeping or not, whether they're good or bad. But the idea of a little elf spying on your family from your mantle or wherever you put them. We never had one, so
no. And we try.
Really know what people do with them.
They put them in different places, I think, every night. Sometimes people in the family, but we also know people who their kids have taken them, thrown them in the trash, put them down the garbage disposal, buried them in a ditch back inside their house. Because
he's creepy.
You know what's weird? 47 episodes, and we really don't get too controversial, but this could do it because a lot of people love Elf on the Shelf.
He's cute.
So if that's your vibe,
the way he looks, but the spying, not a fan.
So, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, it is that thing about elves, and elves can be like dwarves, which I think also are tied to some of the Christmas traditions, they can change in a heartbeat. You got light dwarves and dark dwarves and light elves and dark elves. And so there is really this, just like in the paranormal that we deal with all the time, there's light beings, there's dark entities, and they're all sort of really encapsulated in this holiday.
Well, and that's the nature of the Fae and the elementals, these interdimensional magical, they're all like trickster, they can turn on a dime.
So let's catch up with a couple of Ronald's
Sure,
comments
sure.
here. I have a chimney, but no fireplace. I do have a fire pit in the back. If I know Santa, especially maybe if you have a nice cocktail, a hot toddy or something like that, Santa Claus will actually sit with you at the fire pit and deliver your presents right there. So I think you're good. We do. Okay, one thing at a time, but we should have a late night after hours. Now, we often joke about Into the Outer Realms after hours, but we're not going to go there anytime soon because we're old and we're asleep after hours most of the time. And then he says, you have a lot of stuff on the shelf behind you. Yes, we do, but no elves.
No elves.
Although
We do have some aliens.
Technically, we do have an elf. Well, an elf on the Blu-ray player downstairs. We have Elf on the Blu-ray player who helps us pick our films, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's Christmas Eve and we're being a little silly, and I think that's okay too.
I think it's okay.
Okay, so what do you tell us about the origins of Santa Claus?
Sure. So Santa Claus is probably a combination of the 4th century Greek Christian Saint Nicholas of Myra and the Norse god Odin, who also has a long gray beard, although he rides a gray horse instead of using reindeer. And as Joey mentioned, Odin's association with the pagan Yule in midwinter, Odin is associated with the pagan Yule in midwinter, and he also led the wild hunt, a ghostly procession through the sky.
Right, so that makes a lot of sense. Anybody who knows Odin, you can see the similarities between him and various versions of Santa Claus. And I have to tell you, the Coca-Cola version of Santa Claus that is mostly what we have in America, right? With the very prominent cheekbones and the red and rosy and a red tip nose and all of that kind of stuff. The Father Christmas, I love. And we have a big collection of Father Christmas where it's much more tied to the elements. Oftentimes he's carrying a holly branch or a miniature tree. He has different elements around him and things like that. Those I love, the very sort of father wisdom. Dare I say the old man with the lantern in Led Zeppelin 4, sort of that old wizard. The plows are going by. We're getting 8 or 9 inches tonight. We're going to have a white Christmas, as it turns out. Craig, hello.
Hi, Craig.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for checking in. I know you're with your family enjoying your own Christmas traditions. Craig, of course, is main man at Three Beards Podcasts. We love those guys dearly. We cross-promote all the time. Shared the show last night. It was wonderful. We checked in a little. Craig is part of a new project that we're doing that right now I'll just let you know the acronym RTC. And we're going to be debuting this project January 28th. And hopefully every 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to have a special episode of Into the Outer Realms, which is the RTC. And we're looking at fringe theories, as I like to call them. And I'll give you a little teaser. Craig came up with our first one. We're looking into the Denver airport. The murals, the square footage, the layout, the geometry.
Oh, very strange.
Things that are underground. So Craig is a huge workhorse. He brings a lot of knowledge and great stuff. And we have to say Merry Christmas as well to the other beards.
Yes.
Beard 2 and 3.
2 beards.
Austin and Chris. So thanks for checking in. Okay, so now time to talk about Santa's evil companion. You guys probably know where I'm going with this. A nasty little guy. He's way, way worse than Black Peter. Still stuffs him in the sack. Still is kind of Santa's. I say this. It's sort of a good cop, bad cop. So you either get Santa, good, or you get Krampus, bad, bad, bad. So what does Krampus look like? I know he's been in a lot of movies and all.
Terrifying.
Traditionally, he's a hairy goat-like
Terrifying.
demon. Makes you think of Black Peter, or Black Phillip, the goat again, but a hairy goat-like demon with horns and cloven hooves who punishes naughty children. Now, where does Krampus originate from? Where does he come from? And why do we have this terrifying thing associated with Christmas? Well, he emerges from the pre-Christian Germanic folklore. Germanic folklore. Hardcore. Hardcore.
Scariest Santa imaginable.
Yeah, and speaking about like dwarves and the Nibelung and the whole, ring cycle, all that kind of stuff, Germanic folklore. He announces his presence with eerie sounding bells and carries chains. Makes me think of Marley. So it's nice to maybe see what this all is. So he comes with eerie sounding bells. He carries chains. He has sticks and whips to beat children with. That's lovely. And may even deliver coal or a birch rod. So if I'm on Krampus's list and Santa sends in the bad cop, hey, if I get a birch rod or I get a piece of coal, I consider myself lucky. That's where I'm at with that.
I'm saying.
It makes you appreciate coal a little more, right? You're getting off easy.
All Santa does is,
now,
some coal.
If he's in a really bad mood, Krampus, if there was a little traffic or they were out of eggnog at the Krampus store, then he will stuff children in his sack. Or in a bathtub, which makes me think of Lock, Stock, and Barrel from Nightmare Before Christmas. And because I'm such a geek, I have Lock, Stock, and Barrel's tub. The feet are broken off. I move so much. All my good stuff gets.
Did you have them at some point?
I have Lock, Stock, and Barrel. They're right behind here. They're on a cup with a bunch of pens in it, but I don't want to knock over the camera or anything. Hello. Oh, our good friend Angelina.
Hi, Angelina.
Always will be known as namer of Eleonora. Right there behind us. And Angelina has been with us. We're at episode 47 right now. And I'm pretty sure she was at episode 1.
I think she was.
She joins us every morning, Saturday morning for our story time. We're doing a special one tonight and then doing a rerun Saturday. But we'll talk about that later. Thank you for joining us. Merry Christmas to our good friend. Okay, so the bathtub, Lock, Stock, and Barrel in A Nightmare Before Christmas. And then once they're in the sack, they ain't going to Spain.
I was going to say, where do they go?
They're going to hell to get cooked as a Krampus snack. So again, this is hardcore stuff. So Krampus night, there's an actual Krampus night. By the way, December 5th in Europe, which is the Feast of St. Nick, right? People celebrate by dressing like Krampus and roaming the streets drinking schnapps. So I just find this endlessly fascinating.
I just wonder, do the children who believe in Krampus, I mean, they must be really, really good all year round. If you're faced with, maybe getting stuffed in a bag by a horrifying monster Santa?
Well, let's think about this. There's someone else. A character from musical theater lore made him famous, although he was around a long time in London and English lore, was Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. You probably know that. Some great people, George Hearn, Len Cariou, and of course, Johnny Depp. I don't mind Johnny Depp's
I
Sweeney Todd at all.
Johnny Depp, Sweeney Todd quite a lot.
Yeah, I played the young boy, Toby, in it with the Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. And nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. So, but anyway, what's the point? Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, was you better go to bed and you better be quiet and you better stay asleep or else Sweeney Todd is gonna come and right? Or I know someone whose name I won't mention who in a restaurant to control their child said, you see that man over there? If you're not good, he's going to come over and he's going to take you right away from here. So parents will do that. Or in the store, see that man with the manager badge? He will do nasty things to you if you keep on touching the toys. So if you really think about it, the whole Krampus thing sort of has a tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sort of has a thing. It sort of has a thing. Yes. Hi, Eleonora, the mascot I named. Eleonora is saying hello. Again, a little silliness on Christmas Eve. Why not? Right? This is an unprecedented Christmas Eve for many of us. And Craig says, too, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Craig. So as you can tell, Joey chose all the darker entities, and I got 2 of the nice ones, which is fine with me. But next on my list is La Befana, the holiday witch of Italy, who delivers gifts to good children on Epiphany Eve, the night before the 3 wise men, the Magi, were said to arrive at the baby Jesus's manger.
Right.
And Magi is the root of magus and magician, and they were most likely Zoroastrian priest. The book of Enoch says they were Nephilim, offspring of angels and human females.
So this becomes, I saw a post last week and somebody said, explain to me why some Zoroastrian priests, right? Maguses, magi, magicians, travel all this way, follow this star to come see this Jewish boy who's born in this manger. It's an interesting story. And, you know, the book of Enoch, and we were watching Stigmata last night, which is loosely based on the Gospel of St. Thomas. So there are all of these apocryphal books. I think there's 40 something books that didn't make it into the final version of the Bible that really kind of bring up all this interesting stuff. I am fascinated, right? I have Planner Forthright, who's the angel falling upward. I've kind of redone the whole heaven and hell and humans mythos and sort of mixed it up in my book, Minor Confessions of an Angel Falling Upward. My whole Stanton Chronicles series really gets into a lot of this stuff. It has Roman Catholic cardinals. I grew up Catholic. And there's a lot of darkness. You would think about solstice and Yule all getting pulled in as part of the Roman, right? The Romans were great about just Pax Romana. Let people have their own culture, but we're going to take bits and pieces of it. We're going to make this amalgamation. So many different things. We could do a whole episode just on it. But this fascinating stuff about fallen angels, dark entities, hellfire and brimstone, retribution. I remember being a little kid and these very loud Scotch-Irish priests just talking about damnation and hell. I'm old enough for that. I had a nun who I think was about 3'7", Sister Anthony Marie. They would take at that time the order. I think I went to Holy Cross, and the sisters would take the names of a male saint as their first name. So Sister Anthony Marie, she would wrap me. There's my wooden ruler that we got for a play we did about some vicious nuns. But I still have my wooden ruler here, and I think I still have some scars across my knuckles. So that was interesting. So I think that this whole thing becomes very interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the origins of those things? And what do we kind of, like you said, elf on the shelf is this all wise, all knowing, you better watch or else bad things are going to happen. Even though we've whitewashed some of this stuff, it's still
around.
It's still around.
So back to La Befana, the story of her varies. And Joey actually wrote and directed a version for an Italian festival many years ago.
And I believe that you were La Befana.
I was.
And that was wonderful.
It was a fun role. But in the core story, she's an old woman who encountered the wise men and turned down an invitation to join them on their quest because she was too busy sweeping. I have never turned anyone down for a quest because I was so busy sweeping. So that's really interesting.
It's kind of, from
do it. I've got to sweep. Got to wash my cat.
Excuse me, folks. By this time of night, my voice is just so tired. Yeah, it's a terrible plot device. I can't come see this new savior because I have to clean my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she realizes her mistake. She tries to find Jesus to this day, and she travels around on a broom, sound familiar, visiting children along her route.
There you go. And now, not to bring up horror stories from Catholic school days, but Ronald says, I had the teacher that used to hit me with the oak stick. We used to open and close the window. Just as bad. And then he said, when I did not write with my right hand, they would hit me with that stick. You know, my penmanship is perfect because it was really, really stressed in the Catholic school that I went to. And I guess for Ronald's too. And yeah, right on the knuckles. So yeah, look at my knuckles. Still not in good shape. No, I don't know. And she used to grab me by the ear and pull me, all 3'7" of her. Although probably I was whatever, 4'5" or whatever. So anyway, good times, as the mayor says in Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Oh, let's talk about the Grinch, huh?
Well, yeah.
The Grinch is sort of a Krampus-like character.
He kind of is.
Right? Oh, that happened to Ronald in public school.
Interesting.
Yikes.
Wow.
Oh, man.
And if I remember correctly, I think Ronald grew up in California. Not that really matters about where it was, but
the Grinch, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of turns it on its ear, especially the Jim Carrey one is very subversive, right? Ron Howard's version, because the nice people are actually the naughty people.
Mm-hmm.
He was driven out. He has this whole terrific backstory. And I have a fundamental question now that we're talking about the Grinch here. And I brought this up when we watched it this year.
Mm-hmm.
There is a whole land of Grinches somewhere.
Yeah, where did he
His
come
people, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shows up, they come in the basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
That old chestnut. And nobody knows, like, why does he look like that? And they don't try to find, it's a very, very interesting thing and a wonderful story device. So Angelina says, I guess I was lucky with my catechism, nun. I got time out with my nose against the chalkboard. Oh, boy. My throat is clenching up.
Just thinking about that?
Yes, inhaling chalk
Like
dust.
chalk?
I'd rather just get wrapped on the knuckles.
Neither one sounds fun.
This is a far-ranging episode. I kind of love it. I don't mind that at all. Wow. I remember, you know how I often was asked to wash the board. I remember that. So you have the sponge and you wash the board. And when that water mixed with the chalk, it makes almost like clay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you get that strong clay smell in your nose. So yeah, I think I would go for the ruler on the knuckles. Kids today don't really know how good they got it.
I just have
I'm feeling old now.
Now that we're talking about chalkboards and your sort of aversion, I never knew that that's kind of a thing that people have an aversion to chalkboards. I did not know this because sometimes when I'm doing hypnosis with clients, there's an induction that you can do that you use a chalkboard. Some clients, I have to use a dry erase board in the visualization in the induction because they are so averse to chalkboards they can't even stand the thought of a chalkboard. And I just thought that was interesting. I never knew that was a thing for people.
Right. And Angelina says, I don't like the smell of chalk ever since then. Mm-hmm. Right. I am with you. Not my favorite thing. So, sometimes the nuns acted a little bit like Krampus, as it turns out. So I guess the point of all this far-ranging stuff is that these traditions are more deeply rooted in our everyday lives than maybe we know. I guess that was a really big deal.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as nuns, I guess I'm pretty lucky because I did not grow up in the Catholic faith. I really never met a nun until I was an adult, and the only nun that I know is a very, very lovely woman who is a good friend of mine. Her name is Sister Althea, and just the only nun I've ever met, and perfectly lovely. So. And I've been lucky.
And oddly enough, like when I think about Sister Anthony Marie, I picture her very, very clearly, the features of her face and everything, and in a fond way. Mm-hmm. I think she was a wonderful teacher. and she was doing her thing. So I guess it's all what you're used to, what you grow up with. That just was kind of the thing. I didn't know until our Catholic school closed down in 4th grade and I started public school that there are different kinds of tortures in public school.
Yes, they are.
And some of the same ones if you went where Ronald went. So now we have talked about some crazy characters so far tonight, but I have saved, I think, the best and creepiest absolutely for last. The most paranormal and supernatural Christian Christmas entity is the Kalakansaros, which is a legendary Greek goblin. Never knew about this one. It's half beast, it's half human, and it lives underground until Christmas Day, when it emerges and stirs up mischief until going back underground on January 6th, which is, of course, the Feast of the Epiphany. Right, where a lot of people then, that's the end of the 12 days of Christmas, people take down their Christmas tree, all of that kind of stuff. I won't. I kept the Christmas tree up until March last year, and I think I'm going to again this year because it makes me happy. Unless you protect your home with a basil sprig, a wooden cross, and a bowl of water, or burn your Yule log for the 12 days of Christmas, the Kalakansaros will make your life a misery. Not nice people. Another method to get rid of these things is to leave a colander on the doorstep so they are forced to count holes all night. Now, you vampire enthusiasts out there, I love parallels and patterns. I love how different mythologies spread and change form and all. If you throw grains of rice, a vampire will have to stop what it's doing and count those grains of rice, or salt or something like that. So the same thing, to put a colander, or as we call it in Italy, a sculabasta, right? I was looking for one of those today. We're making stuffed shells. Again, like vampires counting rice. Now, this isn't random, because these have much more interesting connections to vampires and werewolves. As a matter of fact, it's probably where they got their name, the Kalakansaros. It's probably a Turkish name, Kara Konjilos, which means werewolf or vampire, from Kara for black, and Konkalos for bloodsucker or werewolf. So there it is.
Wow.
So you have the most hardcore horror creatures, werewolves and vampires, shapeshifters, that are part of this Christmastide lore. Absolutely fascinating. Now, turns out that they have glowing red eyes. It just gets worse and worse and worse. I'm just picturing
and I
them.
thought Krampus was horrifying. This is crazy.
Yeah, and if you think about, here comes Santa Claus from the North Pole with his reindeer, while these guys are coming out of the ground, raising hell. Kind of almost literally.
Everyone.
So the glowing red eyes, and although descriptions of their shape-shifting really vary across different cultures, they sound a lot like satyrs to me, which becomes very interesting, because they are connected to the masquerades of the ancient Roman and Greek winter festivals. There you go. More takes on the solstice of all that. Of course, of Bacchanalia and Dionysia. So Bacchus, the god of wine and theater, a guy near and dear to my heart, or the Greek version, Dionysus. So this is crawling along. Oh, I think about Jim Morrison and that crazy scene with Patricia the Wiccan in Oliver Stone's The Doors, and all these crazy Wiccan rituals, and getting crazy, getting wild, getting intoxicated on a number of things, tearing the gods apart. It's all kinds of stuff, all kind of encapsulated in this Kalakansaros, right? So what would happen is, at the heights of the revelry of the Bacchanalia and the Dionysia, the participants would put on these masks and costumes with the elements of a beast. And I just want to say there, when you think of skinwalkers, say Skinwalker Ranch, right? We're talking about the paranormal. You put on the pelt of the animal and you take on, or to become a crow man, you put the feathers, right, on you or whatnot. This totem, this whole shape-shifting culture is right there contained in all of this stuff, which all feeds back to Christmas, which I think is really neat. And can you imagine, right, in these times, the impression that was made on the attendees, most of whom were seriously intoxicated? You would see the masks, you would see the costumes, probably totally forget that this was some kind of representation, and it would really make a lasting impression that then survived through the culture through the years and was adopted by different. So if you've had enough of the Calacarazzas, hold on, because there's a little more. Those born at Christmas can possibly transform into Calacarazzos. The cure for this situation is to bind the baby in tresses of garlic or straw, or to singe the child's toenails.
Ooh.
Now, this brings me to Scottish lore, the changelings, the fairies coming, putting a log or a stick in the cradle in place of the child that they take over to the fairy world. It seems to be, again, with all these kinds of things. Ronald asks if a skinwalker can be anything. I believe that a shaman, a shape-shifting shaman can.
Mm-hmm.
When they talk about the skinwalkers tied to Skinwalker Ranch, I believe it's wolves.
Mm-hmm.
By and large, almost consistently, it's wolves.
Mm-hmm. I think mostly wolves, but I think I have heard and read that they can transform into other types of animals.
Right. Yeah. So great question, Ronald. Dan, don't want to miss this. Our good friend Dan Hawkins. Dan has been doing quarantine Thanksgiving. He's been doing quarantine Christmas. He did quarantine Halloween. It's wonderful. Check out Dan Hawkins' page on Facebook. Get involved with his quarantine page. There'll be a link there. Dan, if you want to put that up, but he had a Krampus mask on today, a Jack Skellington mask, and a Grinch mask.
Mm-hmm.
So a trifecta of three of the things we talked about
That's
tonight.
right.
Dan says, I went to public school. My teacher would knock books off students' desks and you had to pick them up one by one in front of her. I had that happen to me in Catholic school. A stack of books, and if you didn't have them all lined up from like biggest to smallest, you see why I'm so OCD. I think this is why. If your books were askew or whatever, they would just come by and push them off the desk, and then you'd have to get up in front of all the kids and Dan, thank you for sharing that.
I was gonna say, how do you say that last one that you just were telling us about?
The Calacantzeros.
Calacantzeros. If there was going to be a mascot for 2020, I think it should be the Calacantzeros.
Right. Okay. You heard it here. No Santa this year. It's all Calacantzeros. And even the elf on the shelf is hiding.
Everything. Mm-hmm.
Even the elf on the shelf is hiding. So if you are a Saturday child, I'm a Tuesday child.
I forgot. I'll have to look it up. I don't know. Maybe Thursday.
They are said to be able to see and talk to the Calacantzeros.
Aha.
I would not advise it, people. But anyway, that's what we had for you tonight. So let's talk about the new year, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of minutes here, and we have some really great guests coming up. But I want to talk about next week. We are going to be on New Year's Eve, and you are going to do Why Make Resolutions Start a Personal Revolution. Mm-hmm. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, we're just going to talk about, people pretty much every January decide that they're going to make some resolutions. For the most part, most people that I know anyway, stick with it for a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. And then things kind of drop away. So we're going to talk about strategies and good ways to make real lifestyle changes, because that's really what people are usually talking about when they're trying to do some kind of resolution. Usually they want to lose weight, they want to stop smoking, they want to start exercising, do things differently, live a healthier lifestyle. So we're really talking about lifestyle changes, and we're going to talk about good approaches for taking those types of changes on and transforming your life so that they don't fall away like most resolutions do.
And you have some really exciting projects this year with all of this kind of stuff between your hypnosis, your meditation, your Reiki, all these different things. You're in a very heavy meditation program now. At the direction of some people very close to us, and you got a couple books you're working on this year. I'm working on a new book. It's called Parallels and Patterns: My Lifelong Quest for Answers. So I'm looking at a wide variety of paranormal things, some of which we'll tackle on RTC and on the show. Some we already have, like contactees and abductees. We're going to be looking at all these different things. We'll be looking at some fringe theories. I'm very fascinated right now with the 1950s, what went on with Eisenhower, the aliens, the deals, the Grenada Treaty, Greada Treaty. I'm forgetting it now. The Cape Girardeau, Missouri crash. Lots of really fascinating things, and some great guests coming up. January 7th, we have Tony Rotunda, who is the caretaker and owner of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic.
She's amazing.
She really is. We tried to have Tony on the show, and we had a technical malfunction about 10 minutes in, but Tanya and I got to talk to her about an hour and a half that day. Tony's experiences are amazing, related to the museum, growing up as someone who was sensitive. Several people in her family have had alien contact and abduction experiences. Definitely want to tune in for that. Then we're going to have Chris from Wasp Paranormal, based in Utah, is going to be on the show January 14th. We love to have fellow investigators on to compare notes, talk about their experiences, how they got involved in this work, and how they do it. Again, RTC is the big debut. Our friends Devin and Emily, longtime collaborators, fellow investigators, will be joining us. February 4th, Nicole Strickland. She's written a trilogy on the Queen Mary, the haunted Queen Mary. I've read a book and a half of the trilogy. This Sunday, I'm publishing a review of the first book, Haunted Queen Mary, Queen of the Seas. This has got to be, I mean, it makes the web library seem tame.
It does.
By comparison.
I can't wait till the pandemic's over, because we're going.
February 11th and 25th, Erica Nelson and Michael Giannetti. Really excited about that. March 4th, Josie Varga. March 25th, your birthday.
My birthday.
Barbara Mango and Lynn Miller. They have a new book out about their experiences, which we're excited about. April 8th, Psychic Chris Garcia is going to join us. And we'll have some standalone shows that we do on our own during that time. We may book some other guests. And we have a bunch of appearances coming up January, February, March. And hopefully things will start to open up with the warmer weather into the summer. Fingers crossed. We have committed to doing a conference presentation at the end of May. We are not going to give you details yet, but we're hoping things are going to open up. So Ronald says, thank you. Dan says the elf on the shelf for 2020 is a gremlin. Oh yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah, somebody gave 2020
that you've accidentally fed after midnight. Those gremlins.
Yeah. So Ronald says he has some ideas for parallel world and parallel universes. He and I have been having a lot of interesting discussions about those things, and we'll be working all of that stuff in. So anything you want to say?
No, I think that covers it.
So we just want to wish everyone, we're thrilled that some folks took time away from their Christmas Eve traditions to join us tonight. You
spent your Christmas Eve with us.
Right. We're going to take just a little break. We're going to change venues to have the Christmas tree behind us. And at 8:30, if you want to join us on my Joey Medea Facebook page, we are going to read A Visit from St. Nicholas, otherwise known as The Night Before Christmas. So if you'd like to join us, we'd love it. We'll have one more opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas Eve and a Merry Christmas. Angelina says, Feliz Navidad. And thank you so much, all of our friends. We've been so lucky.
Thank you, everyone.
We're coming up on 1 year anniversary of the show.
I know.
At the end of January.
I know.
The RTC episode will be a new way to start the new phase with this new feature that we're doing a year in. So we really should thank Skydoor Network, Kelly Steffen, for giving us our original opportunity to have a show. Thank you, Kelly. Angelina says she is going to eat chicken tacos and beef tamales. That's her tradition.
Angelina, do you make the tamales? I would love to get with you about that because that's something I would love to learn how to make.
And we can't go home for Christmas tomorrow, so we're doing an Italian traditional Christmas with some seafood, some stuffed shells, Tanya's famous lasagna, sausage, and a meatballs and pieces of a pork. And our son's friend Ryan is with us this season, and he's making some little mince pies, which I'm so excited about.
Oh,
and
yes.
sausage rolls,
They
which
look amazing.
Yeah, sausage rolls, which my Calabrian grandmother used to make. So be well, everybody. We hope to see some of you in a half an hour on our other set, so to speak. And thank you all. Good night.
Merry Christmas.